I woke up to the smell of smoke. Not fire. Not danger. Just burnt sugar. And silence. That kind of silence that tastes like something's missing. The morning should have smelled like lemon scones. I had baked them the night before, carefully measuring out each ingredient like a spell. It was my birthday, my 26th. I was supposed to wake up to warmth. Candles. Laughter. Something tender. Instead, my apartment was cold. The living room lights were on. A few party cups sat abandoned on the kitchen counter. And the air, sweet, scorched, unnatural, hung thick around me like a warning. I stepped out of my room barefoot, already knowing something was wrong. My roommate, Lacey, stood in front of the fridge, frozen. Not moving. Just staring. "Happy birthday," she said, but it landed too late. Too soft. Then I saw it. On the kitchen table sat a cake, my cake. But on top, in gold lettering, it didn't say happy birthday, Eloan. It said, "Congratulations, Ren and Logan." My stomach folded in on itself. Ren was my sister. Logan was my ex. No, not just my ex. He was my almost. The one I broke up with 6 months ago because I wanted space. He was still in my photos. Still in my playlists. He was the ache I hadn't gotten over. And Ren? She was always the storm that followed me. The louder laugh. The brighter eyes. The better version of me, according to every relative at every holiday table. I blinked at the cake like it would change. Then Lacey whispered, "They announced it last night. Right here. In front of everyone." I didn't remember. I had stepped out during the party to get air. To get Advil. I didn't hear the speech. I missed the moment. But the damage was already done. On the counter, someone had left a note. "Sorry if this stole your thunder. We just didn't want to wait. Hope you understand. Ren." My fingers trembled. A birthday hijacked. A love recycled. A betrayal iced in buttercream. The silence inside me broke open. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there, smelling burnt sugar and knowing, deep in my bones, this wasn't the beginning of a ruined day. It was the beginning of something else entirely. You don't grow up with a sister like Ren and expect to be seen. She was the kind of girl who walked into a room and changed the lighting. Teachers remembered her handwriting. Strangers complimented her freckles. And my parents? They built entire dinner conversations around her science fair projects, her AP scores, her college acceptances. I got "That's nice, Eloan," and a pat on the shoulder like I was a family pet. We're not twins. We're not even that close in age. Ren is 2 years older, but people often assumed we were the same grade. Not because I looked older, but because I was invisible next to her. It wasn't always malicious. At least, that's what I told myself. My mom used to say, "Ren's just high energy, you're more subtle." My dad once joked, "You're like Jazz L, an acquired taste." And I laughed. Because if I didn't, I'd drown. The first time Logan met Ren was during spring break, junior year of college. He and I were still new, awkwardly navigating who paid for coffee and when it was too soon to meet family. He brought over vinyls and that weird Italian soda he thought made him interesting. I made frozen pizza and wore mascara I hoped looked casual. And then Ren breezed in from LA for a surprise weekend visit, all sun-kissed and storytelling. She sat on the kitchen counter, barefoot and golden, telling Logan about her film internship and the time she saw Harry Styles at Arohan. They laughed. I washed dishes. My skin itched, but I ignored it. Because Logan was mine. Because Ren wouldn't. Except she would. Ren doesn't steal. She absorbs. She lets people orbit her until they forget they had somewhere else to be. I didn't lose Logan that night. But something shifted. He started mentioning her more. Started comparing. Lightly, gently, like "Ren would love this song," or "Your sister's hilarious." I should have seen it then. Instead, I spent 2 more years in a relationship that felt like trying to catch sunlight with a paper bag. And when I finally let him go, I told myself it was my idea. My need for clarity. Space. But deep down I knew. Logan was never coming back to me. Because he was already halfway hers. I didn't go to work the next day. Technically, it was a Sunday. but I'd planned to meet with a client about a rebranding package for her ceramic studio. Instead, I stared at my phone for 2 hours, opened and closed Instagram 6 times, and finally deleted the app. Not because Ren posted anything, but because I knew she would. She always did. A perfectly filtered photo of the ring. A carousel of party candids I didn't remember approving. Probably a caption like, "Didn't mean to steal the spotlight, just his heart." I wanted to throw my phone. Instead, I buried it under a couch cushion and curled up like a question mark. Lacey came in mid-afternoon with a bag of bagels and the kind of cautious energy you reserve for someone who's just been hit by a train. "You want sesame or cinnamon raisin?" she asked. I stared at her. Then, did she plan it? Lacey didn't ask who I meant. She set the bag down gently. I think she did. There it was. Truth, dropped like a match into a dry forest. She texted me 2 days before the party, Lacey said slowly, asking if she could surprise everyone with an announcement. I thought she meant job news. She knew it was your birthday. She knew. Of course she did. Ren never did things by accident. She moved through life like it was choreographed, every gesture designed to catch light. She used to rehearse her laugh in front of the mirror. I'd seen her do it when we were 12. And she still got away with everything. Lacey sat beside me, her voice softer now. You don't have to forgive her. And you don't have to disappear either. I swallowed. My throat felt tight. I don't want revenge, I said. Good, she said. But I think you want something. I looked at her. Her eyes weren't pitying. They were steady. And for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Lacey pulled out her laptop. You want to write something? Say something? I'll help. And just like that, the numbness cracked. Not into anger. Not yet. But into awareness. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have words. But I had a witness. And sometimes, that's where survival begins. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was sad. That came earlier in waves, like when I found my old journal tucked under the bed with Logan's handwriting in the margins. Or when I opened the freezer and saw the leftover cake I hadn't touched. But sadness is familiar. What kept me awake was something else. The urge to catalog every moment that led to this. I opened a blank doc on my laptop and typed a single line. When did I become optional? And then I started listing. Ren borrowing my clothes without asking, then laughing when they came back stained. My parents seating me at the kids' table at her graduation party because there wasn't enough room. Logan telling me I was too serious when I cried after my design pitch got rejected. Ren telling people I overthink everything, always with that dazzling little smirk. Tiny cuts. Paper thin. But they bled, didn't they? I wasn't writing for revenge. Not yet. I was just gathering. Making the invisible visible. Like if I could pin every moment to the wall, I'd finally see the shape of the wound. At 3:12 a.m., I messaged Lacey. Do you still have the footage from the party? She responded a minute later. Yeah. Want me to send it? Yes. All of it. There's something sacred about re-watching your own humiliation. It's like revisiting a crime scene where you're both the victim and the ghost. In the video, Ren stands next to Logan, perfectly framed by fairy lights. My friends are clapping. Someone yells, "Wait, are you serious?" And Ren giggles, pulling Logan's hand up like a trophy. My name isn't mentioned. Not once. But I'm in the background. Blurry. Out of focus. A shadow in my own celebration. I paused the video and stared at my frozen face. There was no anger there. Just restraint. And for some reason, that made me furious. I didn't scream. I didn't storm out. I smiled. I smiled like I had practice. Because I did. Because girls like me are raised to protect the room, even when we're burning. That's when I knew. This wouldn't end with another quiet apology. This time, I would be the one turning up the volume. 2 days later, I got an invitation in the mail. Cream envelope. Gold lettering. Ren Elise Calder and Logan Brett Winslow. Invite you to their engagement soiree. It was postmarked the morning before my birthday party. So they didn't just hijack the night. They always planned to. I held the envelope for a long time, not tearing it, just feeling its weight. Like it knew something about me I hadn't admitted yet. Then Lacey walked in and saw it. "You're not going, right?" she asked. I shook my head. "I'm not sure yet." She blinked. "You're kidding." I wasn't. Because something strange had settled in me. Not rage. Not bitterness. Focus. I didn't want to ruin their party. I wanted to reclaim the part of me they erased. "I'm thinking about telling the story," I said slowly. "Not to the guests. Not to Ren. To everyone else." Lacey didn't laugh. She didn't flinch. She just tilted her head. "You mean, like online?" I nodded. "Not a rant. A truth." There's a power in narration. I'd built my career writing copy that made brands feel human. I knew how to shape language, how to let silence speak louder than adjectives. Now I wanted to do that for myself. Lacey sat down across from me. "You'll get backlash. People love a golden girl." "I know. They'll say you're jealous." "I've heard worse." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "What if they don't believe you?" I paused. Then opened my laptop. "I don't need belief. I need freedom." And for the first time since the cake, the note, the burn of betrayal, I felt light. Not empty. Ready. The first sentence was the hardest. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what I wanted to say. And I knew once I said it, there'd be no going back. I stared at the blinking cursor for a full hour before I typed. Some stories don't begin with love. They begin with erasure. Lacey leaned over my shoulder. "Jesus," she whispered. "That's the first line?" I nodded. She stepped back like I'd lit a match. The post started as a letter. Then a script. Then a spoken word video draft. By midnight, it was all three. A hybrid of formats stitched together with memory, sharp honesty, and voice notes I'd been recording since the night of the party. Not for social media. Not for attention. For protection. I titled it The Art of Being Second. It wasn't petty. I made sure of that. No name calling. No rants. Just the anatomy of what it feels like to always be the understudy in your own life, until the lead steals the stage on your birthday. I described how Ren had always been the star, and how I had always dimmed myself out of politeness. I shared how Logan was never mine fully, and maybe I always knew that. How I'd accepted silence because it made other people more comfortable. Then I said it. They announced their engagement at my birthday party. They knew. They planned it. They smiled when I clapped. I smiled back. And I hated myself for it. I ended with a single sentence, like a blade. Being quiet isn't the same as being okay. When I finished reading it aloud to Lacey, her eyes were glassy. She didn't say much. She just whispered, "You're going to break something open with this." I nodded. "I hope so." We didn't post it yet. We saved it. Because timing is a weapon. And their engagement soiree was 4 days away. I posted it the morning of their party. No warning. No teaser. Just a soft click at 8:04 a.m., and then I put my phone face down. It was a clear, dry Saturday. I made coffee. I washed my hair. I folded towels. I acted normal. But something was moving in the background. A pulse I couldn't see but could feel, like static in the air before a storm. By noon, I had over 200 messages. Some were vague. "Just read it. Wow." Others weren't. "I'm sobbing. I've been the second sister too. You're braver than you know." And then there were the reposts. Writers, therapists, micro-influencers, all quoting my line. Being quiet isn't the same as being okay. By 3 p.m., it had over 80,000 views. By 4 o'clock, someone had made a graphic with my words and posted it under the hashtag. Hashtag the second sister. I didn't check if Ren had seen it. I didn't need to. At 5:12 p.m., my cousin Kira, the only one in the family who had ever really talked to me like I was a full human, texted. They cancelled the photographer. Why? Too many people are asking questions. I stared at the screen. That's when it hit me. I hadn't exposed a moment. I had unlocked a mirror. People weren't reacting to Ren and Logan. They were reacting to every time they'd swallowed hurt to keep the peace. To every apology they gave for taking up space. To every sister, cousin, coworker or parent who told them to let it go. And me? I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't cruel. But I wasn't soft, either. That night, Lacey poured us 2 glasses of wine. To the quiet ones, she said, raising hers. I clinked mine against it gently. To the ones who finally speak. By Monday, I'd been mentioned in 3 podcast episodes, a Medium think piece, and a stitched TikTok by some Gen Z poet in Chicago who captioned it. This isn't about siblings. It's about survival. I should have felt overwhelmed. Instead, I felt awake. Like my brain had finally stopped apologizing for itself. Then came the email. Subject line, your voice. Our platform. From a woman named Delaney Reese, editor at Glasshouse magazine, a digital publication known for its features on untold stories, real voices, and what they called emotional architecture. Her message was short but electric. *Aloan. I read your post. It was more than writing, it was resonance. Would you be willing to let us feature your story? Interview, short photo series, and an essay in your own words. You don't owe anyone silence. Warmly. Delaney Reese. Senior Editor, Glasshouse Magazine *. I read it 3 times before forwarding it to Lacey. Her reply came instantly. I'm screaming. You deserve all of this. That night, I said yes. Not because I needed validation, but because I had spent 26 years editing myself, and for the first time, someone wanted the uncut version. Meanwhile, Ren's Instagram went quiet. No ring selfies. No brunch montages. No behind-the-scenes shots of candlelit tables and champagne flutes. Just silence. Until I got the DM. From Ren Calder. 11:04 p.m. I don't know what you think this is fixing. But you've made this way worse than it needed to be. You embarrassed the family. I stared at it, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed. No. You embarrassed me. For years. I'm just done pretending it didn't happen. I didn't send it. I deleted it. Because I didn't need to justify anything to her. I closed the app and looked around my apartment, suddenly feeling like it belonged to someone else. Someone unafraid. That night, I wrote the first draft of my Glasshouse piece. I titled it, The Girl You Only Noticed When I Spoke Up. The Glasshouse piece went live on a Thursday. By noon, it had over 250,000 reads. By 4 p.m., my old high school art teacher commented, I always knew you had something to say. I'm sorry I didn't ask sooner. People from my past, people who had barely looked up from their phones in the cafeteria, were tagging me in posts now. Sharing quotes from my essay like gospel. Some girls aren't late bloomers. They're just planted in the wrong soil. To survive invisibility, I learned to narrate myself. But the most unexpected reaction came from my Aunt Callie. She called me. Not texted. Not DM'd. Called. Aloan, she said, after a long pause. I read the article twice. Once as your aunt. Once as your sister's godmother. And both times I cried. I didn't know what to say. She continued, your mom's pretending not to have seen it. But she has. Your dad too. I said nothing. Not out of fear, just clarity. Then came the question I didn't expect. Would you come home? Just for the weekend. There's a community arts event. I'm speaking on a panel, and they'd love to have you read something. Not about Ren. About you. The idea of going back to Maris Hollow, the coastal New England town where I'd spent years shrinking, made my chest tighten. But something inside me whispered. Same town. New voice. So I said yes. The gallery was small, tucked between a bakery and a bookstore I used to dream about working in. I wore slate blue, the color Ren once called too moody for my skin tone. I let my hair fall naturally, slightly curled, no effort to impress. Just present. People stared when I walked in. Not in a scandalous way. In the way people look at someone they used to overlook, and realize they shouldn't have. At the back of the room stood my mother. Sunglasses. Indoors. As if anonymity was possible when the entire town had read her daughter's truth. I didn't avoid her. But I didn't approach her either. I read a short piece called "This Body is a Map They Forgot to Read." When I finished, the room was still. Then someone clapped. Then another. And then all of them. I didn't cry. Because I'd done that already. This was something else entirely. This was reclamation. As I stepped off stage, I passed my mother. She reached out, lightly touching my arm. "We're proud of you," she said. Not "I'm sorry." Not "I was wrong." Just pride. Late and uninvited. I looked at her hand, still resting on my arm. Then I smiled, just a little. "Funny. I had to write a whole essay for you to say that." Then I walked away. Because the version of me she ignored? She couldn't touch her anymore. A week after I read in Maris Hollow, I got a message from Delaney at Glasshouse. "We want to do something bigger." They were planning a live storytelling series. Intimate theater. Small venue. Just 10 voices. 1 mic. 1 light. 1 night. She wanted me to close the show. I hesitated at first. I had already spoken, written, posted. But this would be different. No edits. No comment sections. No filters. Just breath and truth and audience. So I said yes. The night of the event, I stood backstage at a converted church-turned-art space in Brooklyn, watching women and queer folks and quiet men read from notebooks that looked as bruised as they felt. Every voice shook something loose. And then it was my turn. I stepped into the light. I didn't read from my screen. I didn't memorize. I just told the story. How I grew up with a sister who sparkled so hard it made me feel like dust. How I once dated someone who only loved me until someone brighter walked in. How I let it happen. How I thought that was kindness. How they announced their engagement on my birthday. How I smiled. How I stopped. The room didn't breathe. And then I said, "We are taught to forgive before we're allowed to feel. We are taught to swallow, shrink, silence. But here's the thing. Even silence leaves a sound. And sometimes, when you've been quiet long enough, your truth doesn't just echo. It erupts." I ended with a line I hadn't written down. It just came. They tried to cast me as the supporting character. But I rewrote the script. And now, I don't need their spotlight. I built my own stage. Applause didn't come immediately. It came after a breath. Like they had to absorb it before responding. I stepped back into the wings, exhaling like I'd been underwater for years. Delaney met me off stage, eyes glassy. She didn't say anything at first. Then, "You closed the room. In the best way." That night, I walked back to my apartment under a sky so wide it made me feel endless. Not because I was famous. Not because I'd won. But because I had outgrown the script. Because I knew now that the scariest thing isn't losing love. It's losing yourself trying to earn it. And I wasn't lost anymore. Not to them. Not to silence. Not to comparison. Just here. Whole. And finally fully heard.